we go. All right, so I want to welcome you officially to our Fall Back in Love with Nursing 2024. And I just a little bit of background. What brought about this event of a couple years ago? This is my third year doing this event, but I'm doing it differently this year. Was because I saw the negativity that was being published about nursing. We were in the middle of the pandemic, and there was a lot of burnout, and nurses were feeling so beat up. And I wanted us to remember why we fell in love with our profession in the first place. And then as I began to study and move forward with different things, it occurred to me that there was something lacking, something we were missing. And so that's what brought about this event today. So I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. There we go. So here's the agenda for the day. I'm going to give a brief introduction and tell you a little bit about me and my background, because I think sometimes it's important to know who you're talking to and why I've come to feel the way that I do. And then we're going to talk about why now. Why is the time that we want to look for making these changes? And then what can we do? And then we'll talk about the he, me, we framework, and then I'll do our final tips and takeaway. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll make sure that I get to your questions. So let's go ahead and get into it. So my name is Tina Baxter. I am an advanced practice registered nurse and a gerontological nurse practitioner. I have been a nurse since I got my BSN in 1999. I got my MSN in 2006. I've been working in a variety of fields. So I started out as a psychiatric nurse, as a staff nurse, or actually, if you want to go way back, I started out as a CNA in the nursing home, became a registered nurse, went in psychiatry, was in management and hospital leadership, moved on, became a nurse practitioner and a nurse educator. So I have a master's in nursing education and a postmaster's as a nurse practitioner, and was a staff educator and nurse practitioner for an addictions hospital, was in private practice for psychiatry, moved into primary care for geriatrics, and I did that for a number of years, as well as geropsychiatry, and then moved into now doing geropsychiatry in a community mental health center. And I've been in so many different areas. I've worked in the community, in community nursing. I worked in parish nursing and church nursing. I've had so many different experiences, and overwhelmingly, what it comes down to and what I've seen is that sometimes nurses feel as if they're not being listened to, they're not being heard. And fast forward to starting my weekly news show. At the start of the pandemic, I started this weekly news show, and I was just telling people, hey, this is where you get your protective equipment. This is who has hand sanitizers. I was letting nurses know where to get their things. And then I started covering some of the things that were happening in nursing around the world. And I noticed that there were not only striking in the US, but there were strikes in Canada, there were strikes in the UK, there were strikes in India, even. There were strikes in other parts of the world. And it made me think, why is this happening and why now? And so that's what brings us here today. So that's just a little bit about my background. So let's talk a little bit about nursing history. Now, we always think about Florence Nightingale. When we think about modern nursing, this is who we think of. And I just put a little bit of this about Florence. I just found this interesting. It says Nightingale was the well educated daughter of wealthy British parents who defied social conventions and decided to become a nurse. The nursing of strangers, either in hospitals or in their homes, was not then seen as a respectable career for well bred ladies who, if they wished to nurse, were expected to do so only for sick family and intimate friends. And so the idea that you would work as a nurse in a hospital or in someone's home doing home care and you're working for strangers was new, or so we thought. Because if we go back to ancient history, We discover that in the ancient texts that women with a knowledge of herbs show up in the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, Greek mythology, and some Hippocratic texts. So this is going way back to ancient Greece. And we're finding that the healer, the person who knew information about herbs and things like that, was well respected. And I have to think about my own great grandmother who lived in rural Arkansas, and basically their type of medicine, unless you were catastrophically ill, was folk medicine. And they would just make a poultice and they would, heal you from whatever ailment. So there's a story. My mom, um, when she was younger, got hit in the head with an axe. And back then, you just didn't go to the doctor unless you were about to die. So it was an accident. She was young. She was little. Her sister was chopping wood, and she ran up behind her, and she didn't see her, and she hit her in the head with the axe. Well, instead of taking her to the hospitals, we would do today, she said, "Grandma just went up in the hills, got some herbs, mixed them up, put a poultice on my head, and I went out to play." I mean, it's amazing, and she's done very well. So it's amazing. And then in ancient Egypt, men and women who served as physician assistants were respected and linked to the divine, with the physicians often serving as well as priests. And so we see that there were nursing type roles that predate Florence Nightingale. And I think that's important for us to remember about where we've come from as nurses. So I also looked at this. There's a Buddhist Indian ruler, um, Ashoka, as one of his pillars included an edict to build hospitals along the routes of travelers, establishing one of the first public hospitals on record. And so I think we tend to, in particular, this day and age, in the modern age, think of all of our innovations, all the things that we've done, and we've forgotten our roots and how we got here. And that's why I wanted to kind of review a little bit of this history. I don't. We could spend all day diving into the history of nursing, which I think would be fascinating for me anyway, as a person who loves research. But I think that this is a good foundation for us to understand that the roots of nursing were sown so many years ago. So, in this ancient text, it says that good medical practices requires a patient, physician, a nurse, and medicines, with the nurse required to be knowledgeable, skilled at preparing formulations and dosage, sympathetic towards everyone, and clean. So this wasn't a new idea that started with Florence Nightingale. And I think part of what happened in Western society is that a lot of times we tend to focus on what we consider to be the scientific method, and we have forgotten the history behind some of our roots in nursing. So, for example, a contemporary of Florence Nightingale was Mary Seacole. And if you've never heard of Mary Seacole, she is a nurse from Jamaica, and she was trained in traditional medicine in Jamaica, but she wanted to learn more about the Western medicine. So she traveled to Britain to learn from Florence Nightingale and to help with the Crimean War. But because she was dark skinned, they would not allow her to be of assistance and wouldn't allow her to work with Florence Nightingale. So what did Mary Seacole do? Mary Seacole established her own hospital tent that was much closer to the battlefield than the others, than Florence Nightingale, and she would go in on her own and tend to these wounded soldiers. So much so that they called her Mother Seacole, and now there's a whole museum in Great Britain dedicated to her work. And so sometimes those barriers were there, and we lost some of the traditional medicine that we have. So, and it also in history, the first known Christian nurse was discovered to be Phoebe around AD 50, who was a deaconess who was sent to Rome by Paul, and she served as the very first visiting nurse. So, this is a way for us to understand our history and where we are going. Okay. All right. So let's move a little bit further on. So let's talk about the term nurse. So the term nurse originates from the Latin word nutire, which means to suckle. It was what they used to describe a wet nurse back in the day. And so the first known documents that mention nursing were written around 300 AD. The Roman Empire then commissioned hospitals in each town, necessitating the need for nurses alongside physicians to provide medical care. So, this is where some of that modern hospitals that we see today, even some of that. So during the Middle Ages, nursing care was then driven by the Catholic Church, and so a lot of times it was done by priests and nuns, with the idea that they would be able to care for anybody that was sick. And so the first Spanish hospital was in the late 500s to early 1600s in Merida, Spain, with the mission to care for any sick individuals, regardless of ethnic origin or religion. And so that is where we came from as a nursing background. And so in the 10th and 11th centuries, hospitals began to be included as part of monasteries and other religious places, and the nurses provided a range of medical care services as was required even beyond traditional healthcare. So after Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the concepts of Christian mercy and charity were introduced. Inpatient medical care was derived by the Byzantine influence, so it was provided by the chief physician, professional nurse, and orderlies, and that is the structure that a lot of times we still follow today. So, in order to understand how do we get to where we are in modern nursing, we have to understand our history. In the 7th century, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly, Rafada bint Sayyad became the first Muslim nurse after learning medical skills from her father, who was a traditional healer. She led a group of women to treat injured fighters on the battlefield with permission from Muhammad to set up a tent near the mosque. So these are just some of the backgrounds of what we have today for nursing. So let's fast forward to Florence Nightingale in the 19th century. In 1860, when the very first nursing school was opened in London, it was war that precipitated the movement of nursing from the home to the hospital setting because they had to take care of the soldiers that were on the field. And so as you can see, there were hospitals that had been established in ancient times, but now this is where they've gone back to most of the nursing was happening in the homes, and now we're moving forward to nurses being in the hospital. So then student nurses, in exchange for their education, were not allowed to marry and were not paid, and they provided free labor to the hospital. So this is where we had that change to where the hospital was training the future of nurses. And so I want us to remember that when this came about. So that hospital-based education model had significant long-term implications. It bound the education of nurses to hospitals rather than to colleges. And so we still have some diploma programs in the country. And as a matter of fact, I just read a few months ago about a hospital that's bringing back diploma nursing into the hospital because they want to fill their staff. And so they're going to develop a diploma program for nurses to work in their hospital and go through there. And so I want to keep that in the picture. So during this time, also, as students of color were prohibited from working in the hospital, it also reinforced segregation in society and the healthcare system. And so for students of color to become nurses, they had to work for hospitals that were designated for those individuals, and that's where they could get their training. It also solidified then nursing as woman's work in society. And so that's where some of those things came about, where the physicians who were typically male were the hierarchy, and then the nurses did the women's work of because not only did the nursing students provide the medication and take care of the patients, but they also scrubbed the floors and cooked the meals and kept the kitchen, all those things. They were the housekeepers before we had all the ancillary staff. And so they lived there and they worked there for free. And that's where it kind of solidified that into our mindset. So then nursing grew as the suffragette movement grew in the United States. And again, war continued to propel nursing forward through World War One and World War Two, where now nurses were moving into the armed forces and supporting the troops. They were staffing the military hospitals. There was a lot that moved nursing forward as a profession. And so in the 1960s, nursing then returned back to colleges with the introduction of the Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. And so that's when that started to grow and be more prominent as opposed to hospital based nursing and diploma nursing. And so, as a nursing student, when I went to school to become a nurse, we still had some nurses that were diploma nurses and they were grandfathered in. And I remember a big discussion about whether or not they could hold certain positions in the hospital because they didn't have a degree. And so that's where a lot of our emphasis will come from, and how we got to the structure we are today. So let's look at the state of nursing today. So in the US, very recently, we had a strike, and this was 775,000 nurses and other healthcare professionals were striking in California, Colorado, Oregon, Maryland, Washington, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., all demanding better pay and safer staffing ratios. This was the largest healthcare strike in history. And then when you add in the strikes that happen in Australia and India and all these other places and UK, you think about this. And so nurses across the globe are saying the same things. I've noticed in every those stories I read, they were asking for the same thing: better pay, better staffing, more support and care, and get the things that they need to do their job. Healthcare IT reported that 90% of nurses in their survey in the US are thinking about leaving the profession in the next year, with 71% of the nurses with 15 years or more of nursing experience were thinking of leaving as soon as possible or in the next few months. So it's pretty evident we need a change, right? We have left our historical roots in healthcare and we focus all of our efforts on maximizing profits at the cost of patient lives. And I dare say the very souls of healthcare workers. There's a phenomenon here in the US where a lot of our healthcare entities have been bought by private equity firms. What private equity firms do is a lot of times their focus is on maximizing the profits and decreasing the excess waste, right? Decreasing costs. Well, when you look at how our modern healthcare is set up, the cost of the nursing care is absorbed in the room cost. So nursing doesn't look like it generates any profits. It's more of a liability. So where's the first place that you want to cut? Oftentimes it's in your nursing staff. The other thing is in your expenditures for equipment and things like that. This is what happened with Steward Healthcare. Steward Healthcare was bought by a private equity firm. That private equity firm basically siphoned out the profits, and then now they're in bankruptcy. And there is an actual litigation against the hospital because a woman died because of the piece of equipment, the life changing a saving piece of equipment that she needed to save her life was not at the hospital any longer because they didn't pay their bill. And so that piece of equipment got repossessed. And so the company didn't get paid for several months. So they came and took their stuff back. And then she had to be shipped somewhere else, much further away. And the woman did not survive. And so there's a big lawsuit about those types of things. And it's happening all over the country. So this isn't something that is new, but in order to understand how we got to where we were, we are where we are, we need to understand our history and how this all came about. And so this is a quote from an article that I came across last week, and these are actual nursing quotes from this article. And it says many nurses still feel overworked and uncompensated. What they want to see is a change in their daily working conditions, better hours, fair compensation, and more time with their patients. And so I think that we could agree that that is something that people would look for. So I'm going to stop to share really quick, and I'm going to ask you, go ahead and unmute or put it in the chat. Have you come into some of these issues in your nursing career and been exposed to any of those?
Hi, Dana. I think it's the same in my countries and in Middle East area. It's the same what the nurses faces in the world. I think the same problems are facing around the world by the nurses. Thank you.
And from my research and from what I've been seeing, I would have to say yes, that is the case. It seems to be that this is a universal problem. And I think part of that is again, we've forgotten where our roots lie. It used to be that you would take in everyone, treat anyone, didn't matter if they had the ability to pay, because that was our core mission. And I happened to work for a Catholic hospital years ago, and so it was really beat into us. This is our core mission. We help everyone. Um, we provide care no matter who they are. And I see that there's even a shift away from that in the hospitals that are owned by religious institutions, because what's happened is a lot of them have been bought by private equity firms. And so now they're actually run like a business. I remember being in the hospital management when we introduced lean systems and Six Sigma that they brought from the manufacturing world, then to run the hospital. And so they're looking at making sure everything was lean and cutting back. And this is where I saw some of those changes. And I see a comment here from uh, is it Krensna? Uh, and she says she works in academia and that they're also overworked and uncompensated. Instructors get tired and end up leaving, compromising the quality of education provided to the students. And I happen to agree. It's really hard to recruit faculty right now because you can make more money working at the bedside than you can in academia. And then there aren't a lot of incentives to keep you in academia because it's very kind of cutthroat. You have to publish and research and do all the things. But nursing, because at least in the US, because it hasn't been designated as a STEM field, is often we don't get the funding that we would if we were in engineering or math or physics or something like that. And so there's that disparity again also in the academic setting. So that is so true. So let's go back to our slide presentation. So as I was thinking about this is where I came up to the he, me, we model of kingdom entrepreneurship. What I discovered was that in our business practice, what were we lacking? What were we missing? And looking back in the history of nursing, it was often tied to spiritual practices. And universally, we had this common goal of helping those that could not help themselves. And so when I came up with this model, um, and it was given to me, what I looked at is that we oftentimes in our businesses, in our business practice, whether you're in the hospital, at the bedside, in academia, we often divorce everything and put them into little pockets. This is for me, this is for my business, this is for my spiritual life. and we don't integrate them. And so, if we take this and we integrate our whole self and our connection with the universe, our connection with the divine, then we begin to understand how we can carry out our assignment and accept our true calling. So, the he part of our he me model is that it's upward facing. This is where we dive into our divine assignment and our true calling. And I've had some nurses that I've talked to, and there are some that admit they weren't called to be a nurse. They decided to do it because it would be a good job and they would get money and they'd have job security. And it's often those nurses that burn out more quickly because they don't connect what they're doing with their life spiritually. What do I mean by that? We have to have a connection to what we're doing. We bring in our whole self when we come to our work. Our work is part of our experience. Everything that we do is in service to the divine, right? And so we bring that our whole self to our work. So whether you dig ditches, whether you are a CNA, whether you're in housekeeping, you're the physician, you're the nurse, you're an engineer, everything you do is to bring glory to the divine and you work unto him. And so it's upward facing in this model. And I think we've been missing that in a lot of our business structure, which is why we struggle. Then we have to look at the inward facing. And this is the me part. This is where I work on my mind, body, and spirit. This is where I get myself ready to be a part of the assignment. So, for example, I went through a time of a lot of testing in my business. I had a previous business with business partners. And what became evident to me, one of the reasons why that business we decided to end it was not just because my partners were ready to move on and do other things, but we were no longer working together. The vision changed and we weren't having the same vision. And so that was a very painful experience to have to close down that business because it happened abruptly. Now, looking back, that was the best thing that happened. It happened right before the pandemic hit. We closed in February 2020, and the world shut down by April 2020. We were completely shut down. It worked out perfectly. This was God's timing. But that did create a wound there because I'm the type of person that I go all in. I'm very loyal. I want to, see things through. And for it to close and in the manner in which it closed for me was very difficult. And so I had a heart wound there. And I had problems with trust in other individuals. And so it took me working through that and having some inner healing sessions for me to understand why this was happening and how to get myself better. And so it's those things. It's also doing your personal development. During this time, I did a lot of work and reading books and going to seminars and investing in myself and taking training so I can develop these skills so I can further the business that I have. And so it's that inward work that you do. So you have the upward facing towards the divine, the inward work towards you to get you ready for your business. And then lastly, we have the outward facing, the we, that connection we have with others, the customers that we serve. And so that's where we lean into fidelity, stewardship, and integrity. This is where I say, I'm going to create a product for you and I'm going to put the best product on the market because I'm serving my customers. I'm going to give you the best service that I can because I'm serving my customers. It is bringing all those elements together in your business and understanding why your business um, is there. Now, this could be the nurse who's at the bedside. This could be the nurse that is in academia. This is for the nurse that's in management. This is for the nurse that's an entrepreneur. Because if we take this entrepreneurial framework and understand how we interact with our patients every day. Are we giving our best to our patients every day? And how how are we keeping ourselves shored up and working on our own self-care and development so that don't burn out, and then remembering that our calling, what it is that brings us to where we are today. And I think as we integrate that, and this is something we talk about more in the program, as we integrate that into our lives and into our business, we'll do better and we'll see a change. And we can't wait for administration to do it. It has to start with us. We have to start on our own. And so I looked at some kingdom nursing principles and things that we universally that we should know in the kingdom. And one thing is that kingdom nurses seek wisdom. We look for the wisdom. I talked to so many nurses on the Nurse Shark Academy show, and I am just amazed at some of the things that they're doing. They are starting businesses, they're writing books, they're developing new technology. It's just wonderful to see all these things. And as nurses, we don't go to school, finish our school, and never pick up a book, never take another training, never invest in ourselves. We seek wisdom. We want to be the best in what we're doing in our field. And so, if you want to introduce these principles into your practice, one of the things we do is we look for wisdom. Nurses, kingdom nurses, feed their young. We don't eat our young. And this is so important. I just talked to a nurse yesterday. We were doing her podcast taping, and she happened to mention a nurse that mentored her when she was a young nurse. And her name, she still remembers this woman's name. Her name was Ruth, the woman that mentored her. And I asked her, I said, what was it about Ruth that's so stuck in your mind? And she said it was her kindness. It was her willingness to answer questions and to be there for me and to support me as a brand new nurse. And we have to remember what it's like when we were brand new nurses. And I told a story about how when I was trained and I got my first nursing job on second shift, I was in training, still in orientation. On third shift, like a few minutes later, I was the charge nurse. And that was my introduction to nursing. Went from orientee and new nurse to I'm in charge now on third shift, and I have to open up a floor with two very unstable detoxing patients. And so I say this to say we need people in our lives, mentors to help us grow our nurses. And so nurses that operate on kingdom nursing principles, we do not eat our young, we feed our young. Kingdom nurses demonstrate love to the unlovable. This is where, patients may come in and they may not look like us, sound like us, dress like us, smell like us, act like us. They may be the most horrible people in the world. They may have done some things that um, we may not agree with. I had a client that I talked to, and she was saying she refused an assignment. She was a CNA. She refused her assignment because the person that she was taking care of had done some really bad things and some criminal things. Let's just put it that way. It wasn't that she would have been unsafe with this individual. This individual had abused a child. And she just refused to work with that person, refused the assignment, and ended up even losing her job over it. And I thought, I know that this for your mental health was not good for you, and maybe that was the right thing for you. But I also thought, what if that was your grandmother or your father and they had done something in their past? How do you demonstrate love to the unlovable? And so I go back to how in ancient history, it didn't matter who you were. The idea was to take care of you because you were a person in need and to first see that person as a human being. Kingdom nurses walk in integrity. I've been looking at, and I've been on a list, and I get it every week from the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, and it has reports of nurses and other healthcare providers that were caught up in fraud, and they've done things, and I've lost jobs because I refused to participate in fraudulent activity. I left one place of employment because they were doing things like unethically billing. They would walk into a building, see a resident sitting in their wheelchair, say hello to her, "Hi, Mrs. Smith," and then say, "I can bill for that." And I'm like, Why? How can you bill for that? Oh, well, I talked to her and she was able to answer and recognize who I was, so I assessed her cognition. So I'll bill for that. And I said, well, you didn't meet medical necessity. Where was the need to see her? So again, because I wouldn't play along, I was asked to leave that position, and I was very grateful. And then a few years later, they ended up having to pay back lots of money to the government because of negligent practices. So again, Kingdom nurses walk in integrity. This is, we don't falsify documentation. We don't have documentation parties where you forgot to fill in some holes on your sheets, and so you just go in and fill in all the ADL sheets. Yeah, I've heard of those things. I work as a legal nurse consultant, and I work on nursing home cases, and I've heard of those practices being done. We don't do those things as Kingdom nurses. We don't falsify documentation. And then Kingdom nurses treat everyone with dignity and respect. And sometimes that's hard to do. I don't know about you, but because I work in psychiatry, I've worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life that have some very strange ideas that I would never enter into my mind. And yet I meet them where they are. I do not judge. I treat them with respect. And they can be some of the most awful people. I remember I had a young man come into the office and he was so devastated. He was in tears because he was having recurrent thoughts to molest children. And he was horrified by this. I knew that this was out of my wheelhouse. I said, okay, I'm not the person to treat you, but I know someone who specializes in this, and I'm going to make sure I refer you to him. He never acted on the impulse. He was just terrified that one day he would. And he said, I cannot get the thoughts out of my mind. And I had empathy for him because I realized he didn't want to do those things. It was just part of his illness, and we needed to fix what was happening. And I just didn't know how to do it. So I was able to refer him to someone who appropriately worked with that population and was very good at it. That is a population I would not be able to handle. And I thought, I'm glad there's people that will do that. I have nurses that say to me, I could never work for hospice. I worked for hospice care and loved it. And they're like, oh, I could never do that. And I said, everybody has their own specialty and their own niche and what they're called to. I like the idea of walking with someone when they're getting ready to transition and being there for the family. I like to be that person and helping them in that process. So, but it doesn't work for everyone. And you may have someone that doesn't like you for whatever, your religion, the color of your skin, the fact that you're a woman, the fact that you're a man. I had a patient that absolutely refuses to have a man give him a bath or put in a catheter because it just wasn't going to happen. And so, they may act out, they may call you names, they may do these things. But again, we have to remember that it's our duty to treat them with respect and dignity. And then Kingdom nurses encourage and exhort. I say this because we have this um, thing in nursing where sometimes if you've ever been on the other side of the table and you experience judgment because you made life choices that maybe someone didn't agree with. It's like the person who's diabetic and they love cake and they want to have a piece of cake every day. We know that's probably not good for them. We tell them and let them know, but we can't force our values on other individuals, nor should we berate or belittle them. I was thinking about the this happened in the US. There were some nurses that got on, they were labor and delivery nurses, and they got on TikTok and they started saying, these are my icks. And of course, they were at work in their uniform, readily and clearly identifiable. And they were saying things like, they were got an ick because the baby daddy had two baby mamas in the hospital having a baby at the same time, or they were saying something like, you asked for pizza and you're in there, get ready to have this baby, and you're not supposed to eat anything. All these different things that they were saying, and but it was very derogatory toward the patient. And my thought was, why wouldn't you not encourage and exhort that patient, and let them know, hey, we understand you're in a tough situation. How can we make it better for you? Not get on TikTok and make fun of them. And I've seen things where we had an aide get fired because they put on social media, on Facebook, a post of an older woman that they were changing or doing something and saying, see, this is what I have to deal with every day. These are things that are actually happening. And so when we spend our life on social media, we have to be careful about what we're doing. And are we encouraging and exhorting people? I see so many negative posts now by nurses who say, don't go into nursing and this is a horrible place. And I'm like, you know, nursing, yes, there are challenges, but I still say nursing is the best career ever. You just may be in the wrong place. Maybe you're in the wrong specialty. Maybe you're in the wrong position. Maybe you need to step away from the bedside. Maybe you need to find a different way. My philosophy always is, don't leave your profession, leave your job. And then kingdom nurses work their kingdom assignment. And what do I mean by that? When you understand who you're called to, or as one of my mentors call it, your field of favor, when you understand where your area of impact is going to be, you stay there and labor there. Now, I told you in the beginning, I had many, many different careers. I had many different specialties that I worked in and many different jobs I moved through. And it's over the years, it's every time something new came up, I evaluated it. Is this part of my journey, or is this something that I want to tackle or learn, or is this a good move for me? And so it's okay to move around and understand, because if I hadn't had all of those experiences, it wouldn't have brought me here today and be ready to serve in this capacity as a mentor and a coach. So I understand the assignment and I work in my assignment and I stay in my assignment. There are so many different things that are out there that you could do. And I realize that as I review these things and these opportunities, I look at, does this resonate with what my assignment would be? Everybody's path is not the same. So, for example, when I talked about the business that we closed in 2020, one of my business partners, she retired from nursing pretty much, and now she volunteers and she uses her nursing skills in a different way because she was ready for retirement and ready to be done. And so she volunteers in the community with an organization called the Gathering of the Queens. And they get together and they provide a food pantry. They do senior events for senior citizens and help them. And she's doing wonderful work, right? The other nurse that I worked with, she decided that she really wanted to do research and provide care for HIV patients. So she opened up a clinic specifically in a nonprofit for HIV patients, doing important work. She understood her assignment. And so once I understood that all of our paths may diverge, we worked together for a time. It was a season, and then it was time for us to move on and do other things. And so I think in that way, I've learned a lot about evaluating whether that activity was going to fit into what my assignment was going to be. And so I wish them well. And we are all still friends, by the way. We're all still friends. We still get along and still talk to them and see them from now and then. And then kingdom nurses show empathy and emotional intelligence. And this is not just with our patients, but with each other and with those that work for us and with us. So, again, it's learning those things and taking what we see, those negative experiences that people are talking about, and turning it into the positive. This is where we show empathy and emotional intelligence when you have someone that comes in there and they're yelling at you, screaming at you, threatening you, etc. So, for example, I had a patient that years ago, and I got him on the nursing unit. And it seemed like every time he came in, I was the one admitting him. And so I admitted him two times to this one unit when I worked at this one hospital. I left that hospital and we became the supervisor at another hospital on a similar psychiatric unit, an addictions floor. And he was admitted over there, and I did his admission again. When I first met this guy, he called me every name in the book. He was angry, he was bitter, he had a problem with alcohol. He just was a horrible person. He called me so many things I had to go look it up because I didn't know what it was. But by the time we got to his third and fourth admission, we had developed a rapport, and he would come to me and ask me questions and seek me out, and so he respected me. So let's fast forward to a few years later. He's in his sobriety. He's been doing very well. He was going to his AA meetings. He was participating, really, and becoming a volunteer. He comes in and he is just devastated because his son also became an alcoholic, and now his grandson was starting to drink, and his grandson was a teenager, and so he wanted to get his son help. And he said, I've talked to my son. My son knows what I went through. I don't understand why he's doing this and why he won't change. And then I was able to say, do you remember when you first met me? And I remember this guy's name. His name was Dewey. And I remember him. I still pray for him every now and then when he comes to my mind. And I said, do you remember when I first met you? And he's like, not really. I said, when I first met you, you were resistant. You didn't want to be there. You called me every name in the book. The only reason why you were there was because the judge said you had to be because you got a DUI, and you were just awful. And he was like, I can't believe I was like that. I'm so sorry. I said, I didn't say that to make you feel sorry. I said that to say, look how far you've come and how long it took you to get there. You have to have some patience with your son. He's not ready. And until he's ready, all you can do is be supportive. All you can do is let him know that you're there. All you can do is say, hey, when you're ready, son, I will go with you to come in for detox. I will be there for you when you're going through. And he said, you are so right. I want it so badly for him because I know what my life was like, and I don't want him to go through the things I did. He's got DUIs, lost his wife, lost his job, lost, his house, all these things he went through. He says, I'm trying to keep my son from that. And I said, I understand that, but you have to understand he has to be ready. Now, in that moment, I could have said, hey, you were an awful person. Your son's probably an awful person. I didn't. I said, listen, it took you a long time for you to get to where you are today. I stuck with you through that. You got to stick through it with your son. Um, Kingdom nurses steward resources wisely. And this was a big one. This was a big one for me because I thought about this. And I thought about the waste that I see in healthcare. The nurses that bring home uh, the supplies from the hospital or steal the paper or make copies of things that they're not supposed to on the work copier. I look at that. And even those little things eat at you and keep you from being your best person. I look at the fact that, we get these big bags of IV fluids and then we don't use them and then we throw things away and then, all the waste that we have in healthcare. And so how can we steward our resources wisely? And it's not just in the hospital or at the bedside. Let's talk about our resources at home. How many times are we being wasteful in what we're given at home? And so one of my mentors said, we give God the 10%, the tithe for those of us that tithe, right? We give the 10% or we donate to charity. He said, but how do we steward the 90% that we have left? What are we investing in? And for me, that was a big aha moment. What am I doing with the rest of my 90%? Am I doing something that's going to further the kingdom and bring about glory for God? Or am I going to be doing something that's wasteful? And I'm not saying don't have fun, don't go on vacations. In fact, I encourage you to do those things. But what are we doing? How are we investing in the world to make the world a better place? And are we stewarding what we've been given? And resources isn't just about money, it's about the talent, it's about the time that we're given. How are we using our talent and our time? And so one of the things that I purposed was to make sure that if I'm going to make a difference, I want to shine the light on what's happening. I like to balance my news show to talk about and support nurses that are doing wonderful things. So I don't just want to report on the strikes and on the lawsuits and on the things that are happening and the viruses and the cyber attacks and all that stuff. I purposely look for nurses who are making a difference because I think we need to call out their name and say, we see you, we encourage you. How do I steward the resource of the platform that I've been given? And can I do that wisely? I could make TikTok dances and do all those things on social media, or can I spend that time better educating others and supporting the profession of nursing? How am I stewarding that time? And then Kingdom Nurses practice professional ethics. This is one of those things that I saw going, and as I've been doing researching, is that sometimes we cut corners. Sometimes we forget that there are things that we're not supposed to do, and we uh, don't follow the rules. So, for example, there was one home care agency that I was contacted to work for, and they asked me to be the co medical director. And I said, great, wonderful. And I said, okay, well, let's I'll be a resource to your nurses if they have questions about the care, the plan of care, they need help, have them call me. The problem was I never got a call from any of the nurses. Who I got calls from were the marketers, and the marketers wanted me to put and send all my patients to that particular home care. Well, if you're in the US, that's illegal. We can't do that. That's called the Stark rule. You can't refer people to yourself. There's ethical boundaries and things like that. And so, of course, that relationship ended because when I brought that up to them, they suddenly decided I couldn't be co-medical director anymore. Another thing that showed up with ethics, I had a patient who was of a different religion, and she was struggling with that religion, and she had questions. And in her religion, you're not allowed to ask questions because if you do, then you become shunned, and she may be excommunicated if she asked any questions. So she just had to follow what the spiritual leaders told her to do. And so I said, well, what you might do is maybe talk to your family or do some independent research and ask God to show you what to do in this situation. I couldn't tell her, well, I think you're in a cult. I think, you need to leave. No, I didn't do any of those things. I didn't cross those professional ethics. But I did say, why don't you pray about it and seek wisdom in this? And let her know I hear you. I can't speak to this because, again, this is your religious practice. And I certainly don't want to tell anybody not to practice their religion. I said, so why don't you seek wisdom in this? And maybe he'll lead you to decide what to do, whether or not she plans to stay in this religion or not, that is up to her. But she said they were in trouble with the government because they were excommunicating people because of asking questions. So there's a whole big thing. And so she's questioning right now, and she recognizes that her mother is getting older and will one day die. And now she has questions about the afterlife and all these things, and she can't get her answers to her questions because she's not allowed to ask questions in her religion. So she's struggling with that. So in that, I showed empathy, but I didn't cross professional ethics. I didn't say, well, you should just dump them and go and join my church, or I didn't do any of those things. I encouraged her to seek the wisdom that she was looking for, and hopefully she'll get her answers. Oh, that came up twice. There's another one, 11, but I think it just kind of I'll find out what it is later. And so then lastly, Kingdom Nurses advocate for justice. And I've heard nurses say, well, I'm just a nurse. No, you're never just a nurse. But I want to change it to say you are a just nurse. And you're right. Cultural competence does matter for nurses. It does. It does. And again, I've had clients, I've had from all types of religions. I've had people that were atheist and anti-religious. I've had yeah, I just meet you where you are. I meet you where you are. And then Kingdom Nurses advocate for justice. And this is something that, I don't want to be accused of what they call toxic positivity. If you've been on social media, you probably heard that term when they're talking about nursing and healthcare. I understand we got problems. But as nurses, we advocate for justice. We want to make sure that we provide a venue for that. We fight for our patients and we fight for our profession. We fight for one another. We fight for what's right. We were advocates for justice. And you can see that in our history for nurses like Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole and Clara Barton. You can see that even for the nurse that started the hospitals and worked there in Islam. You can see that who worked for Muhammad and started those the Muslim nurse. You can see that in the nurses that started the hospitals during um, the Byzantine era. You can see that. You can see that. And so we advocate for justice. It was a lot of times the nurses that were in the suffragette movement so that women could have a way to have a voice and make a living on their own. We see that we fight and advocate for justice. And this is why I support the nurses that take to the picket line. And I support the nurses that are speaking out and the ones that are trying to make a difference in the world. So, what are our next steps? Where can we go from here? And so, if you would like to continue this conversation, there's two things that I have going on. The first is for those that are just looking for something different or looking for a different way, or maybe you want to do something alongside of what you're currently doing. I work my 9 to 5, I still see patients, but I have my own business, my own practice. And so, if you're looking to get started in a business and you want to do that, you can join our micro mastermind 30-day intensive. So in 30 days, we're going to help you develop the plan for your business. We're going to help you get ready to launch. And so in 30 days, this is going to be intensive. We meet weekly. There's going to be a lot of work, but this is a challenge. This is my first time offering this program. It's my very first time offering this. And yes, anywhere in the world, because what we're going to talk about are basic business principles and help you develop that in your neck of the woods where you are. We'll have weekly group coaching sessions. We'll have 2 1-to-1 coaching sessions. So when someone comes to work with me on a 1-to-1 basis, one coaching session is $350 for each session. So I'll give you 2 of those coaching sessions. You'll get the business builder templates that will be a part of this as well. You'll also get access to the core curriculum videos and the Jumpstart Nurse Biz training videos, which is valued at $197. And I'm only opening this up for 10 slots. So for 10 people only, I'm opening that for 10 slots because I really want to get us to work together on intensely. There's going to be a lot of work. This is for fast action takers. This is for people that are saying, I'm ready to start because guess what? Day 1 starts on Monday. So this is for fast action takers that really want to be a part of this. And so today, the regular price will be $397, but for today only, you can use the promo code Kingdom, and the price is $297 for this 30-day program. And we're going to work with you intensely one-on-one. And there's the QR code if you want to scan that and take a picture of that with your phone. Now, if you become a member of the Nurse Shark Academy, this is the other way you can do this. You can become a member. And by becoming a member, you'll get the Nurse Shark Academy Masterclass with the new expanded curriculum with the He, Me, We framework. We'll cover the sessions of your overview, exploring your why, the work it part, we work it out. That comes in 2 parts, your power up and your wrap it up. And that valued at $14.97. We also have a copy of the ebook, the Nurse Entrepreneur ebook. Another bonus. I like to give bonuses. And so if you sign up and become a member today, you get legal pitfalls to avoid in small business. You get that valued at $49. That course runs for $49. Using social media to grow your nurse business. Yes, no, what? Protecting your reputation on social media, ads on social media, and how to do that. And I don't know about you, but the algorithm has been changing. And then live events, and that valued at $99. And then we added on also the Freedom Finance Workshop at $47 value. It's where we talk about business and how to secure financing for your business growth, whether you're launching a startup or scaling your small business. It equips you with the knowledge and tools to make informed financial decisions. And then I also have a lot of guests and resources to introduce you to for that. So if you want to take the 30-day intensive, today only it's 297. You can just do that, or you can become a member. And if you become a member, not only do you get the 30-day mastermind intensive, you get the 6 business builder session with the Academy membership, you get the bonuses of the ebook, the legal pitfalls, the using social media, the financial freedom. Altogether, that's a value of over $2,000. If you were to do every one of those separately, it would be a value over $2,000. But um, or you can join. And if you join the Nurse Shark Academy, you get all of those things for a 6 month membership, because maybe you're the person that says, 30 days is too soon. I need to spread it out. I want to do a little bit more. I want all the things. I want to learn it all. So I want the membership, and you get all of that included, and you can do a 6 month membership. I don't hold you hostage. It is, if you want to renew after 6 months, you can. If you want to stop at 3 months, you can. I don't hold you hostage. You can do the 6 month membership. If you pay in full, it's $1,800 for everything. And you get access to all of our video archives, the monthly calls, the one-to-one coaching calls. Um, you get all our past trainings. You get everything. When you become a member, I just give you it all. You get the 6 month membership for 1,800, or you can pay monthly for 299. There's the QR code. You can join the Nurse Shark Academy to get to our business pricing plans if you are interested. And so here's our final tips and takeaway. Nursing has always had a rich spiritual history. The priorities of nursing includes the care of the patient and the well-being of the nurse. And this is again where we're missing the mark, because we focus on patient satisfaction scores and the well-being of the patient, but we forgot the well-being of the nurse. Nurses have been entrepreneurial in their endeavors from the beginning of time. We've always been entrepreneurs, and you can be entrepreneurial at the bedside in how you work in your unit. And then yes, there is a need for change. A need for change has been identified because what we're doing now isn't working. So how can we make the change? And so we can make that positive change in a profession. We've done it before, and we can do it again. It takes nurses that are being brave, like Florence Nightingale, like Mary Seacole, like Clara Barton, like nurses today that I see. And so nurses just like you who are being brave in what you're doing. And then nurses are at the forefront of innovation, and we continue to do so. And I'm encouraged by that. So here's what you can do. You can register for the Micro Mastermind 3-day, a 30-day challenge, or you can become a member of the Nurse Shark Academy and get that and all of the other bonuses as well. Um, so I want to thank you for your time. You can always contact me at the Nurse Shark Academy show at baxterprofessionalservices.com, or you can go to our website, the nursesharkacademy.biz, or you can give me a call at 765-387-8046 as well. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share, and I will open up the floor for more questions or comments. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your comment. I see your comment. Thank you. What I can ask you, thank you, and what I can and ask you to do is again just share the information with others and let them know that we are creating a movement here. This isn't a one and done. This is a movement, because I really do think that if we're going to change nursing, we're going to have to integrate all of our whole self to this and bring it into the process. And I found that that spiritual piece is what has been missing a lot of times, and also the fact that we are not focusing on ourselves and our self-care. So again, join me. Thank you. The replay will be available to you as well. And so I will put that, you'll get an email later on Everyone who's registered will have an opportunity for the replay, and I will post the video up on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the replay from there. All right. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to give you back the rest of your Saturday. And don't forget to use that promo code Kingdom if you want to join in the 30-day uh, micro mastermind. This is the first time I've offered that program. It was an idea that I got from another coach. And so if you want to join us for that, please do so. I only have 10 slots. So thank you. All right.